Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just a Man. Just a man. Today we're going over the dungeon weapons for Sundered Doctrine. I kind of regret not making a video for the weapons for Vesper's Host, but I was just kind of over it at that point because I had made a lot of Vesper's Host content, and like 3 out of the 4 weapons in there are like really good, like 2 of them really, really good. So I did not want to miss that opportunity again with Sundered Doctrine and these weapons. We only have 4, so don't worry, I'm not going to be yapping for too long. That being said, I don't know if these weapons are necessarily as impactful as the weapons from Vesper's Host. We'll get into maybe why I feel like that's the case here in a moment. But something that I will say is that the origin trait is it's kind of juiced. Weapon adapts to targets when dealing damage to weak targets. Shots explode, so it's basically like built-in sort of explosive rounds. And then to strong targets, become exhausted, which is essentially like an offshoot of Sever, which is an incredibly strong effect. So the origin trait here is kind of nice origin trait. We're going to start with Unsworn, the Strand Trace Rifle. What do we got on this thing? This is the second strand. Put it down. This is the second strand trace rifle. The first one was Incisor from Trials. The main difference here is just like some new perks. You know, you got Tear, you got Detonator Beam, new one. Elemental Honing is a new one. But I recall Incisor having the ability to get something like, Subsistence Killing Tally. And if you wanted to repeat that, you could certainly do it here. And, maybe you were looking at that trace rifle like, if only I could tolerate Trials for more than one game, or whatever you're feeling. So Detonator Beam is like the new like shiny perk on this thing. And I gotta say, from a single target damage point of view, I was pretty underwhelmed with this experience. I remember just kind of, shooting a target. I think you can get about, if you're just doing some single target stuff, you can get 3, maybe 4 explosions in a magazine if you're hitting like every single ammo that you deploy from this thing. But the single target damage was kind of like to me. Like it didn't feel that good. But where I think this is really going to excel is in environments that are very enemy dense. Getting that big explosion. Stats for all, I imagine, would just trigger instantly if you wanted to do that. So yeah, Detonator Beam, I wasn't personally feeling it for the single target here. Of course, you have, if you want to go just purely with the strand options, Tear, Hatchling, something like that, you could totally do that. You got stats for all, rewind rounds, you got subsistent, like all great stuff. Thresh is on here, it's okay. Shoot to Loot's on here, which is going to matter to maybe like 117 people. And that's it. Shoot to Loot is not something that I typically recommend to like the average player doing the average thing. I think it's more of a if you know type perk, kind of built for the top end of players who are really, really, really trying to optimize their gameplay, shooting your heavy bricks, your special bricks, so that you can maintain your damage and your pace without having to run around looking for ammo, because that is a very, very significant time loss. But for just your mundane moment-to-moment things that you're doing, do you need shoot to loot? No, of course not. So this is more for the people who know and the people who are doing those kinds of things. Or maybe if you want to start practicing with it, you could totally start practicing with it. I got nothing against shoot to loot, right? But it's a perk that I think 99% of the population probably does not really need to concern themselves with. Second column, bait and switch is okay. Maybe you combine it with the new linear fusion from the dungeon. We got elemental honing on here, which I think is very build dependent. Target lock is also on here if you wanted to do some sort of target lock thing, single target type setup. If you wanted to do that with like maybe some rewind rounds, of course, subsistence, killing tally, rewind killing tally, also totally viable options. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be hunting down Detonator Beam just to kind of play around with the new thing. And in again, those enemy dense environments, I think there's maybe something there, but I'm not completely sold on it just yet. Next up, we have Unloved, which is a strand heavy burst hand cannon. I believe it is the first strand heavy burst hand cannon. Warden's Law, I feel, is one of the more popular ones, specifically for hunters using a Lucky Pant setup, because it's, a legendary version of something like, Malfeasance or whatever people want to be using. Sorry, that was my dog. But all the other heavy burst hand cannons that are out there, I'm thinking like Bold Endings, I'm thinking the friggin' Arc one from Trials, Yesterday's Question, I believe it's called. Even the Mahi's HC4 World Drop, which is Void. All of these other hand cannons are using elemental-based perks, right? They're using Destabilizing Repulsor Brace. They're using Jolt. They're using Headstone, right? So they're all using the gifts that the game has given. And so I'm kind of leaning in that direction with this thing as well. If you want to go with Tear, AoE Sever is great, but it's more defensive, and thus, I don't think you necessarily need it in probably like the bottom 50% of the game. So you could go with, something a little more simple, Paracausal Affinity, even something like Frenzy if you really want to do that. Kill Clip's a little more old school. Yeah, I mean, Tear is good. If you just want to go straight up like all strand with the Hatchling Tear, I'm certainly not going to stop you. First column, we got Dragonfly to kind of mix with Tear if you want to just do like some big AoE type stuff on your kills. I think that's totally fine. Rapid, I'm probably not going Heating Up. I'm probably not going Killing Wind. Outlaw, yeah, you could if you want. You want to combine Outlaw and Tear because you're hunting down Precision Final Blows. That's fine. I just don't really know if heavy burst hand cannons have gotten really that popular in the mainstream. I still think people are going for your stereotypical 140 RPMs. I've been using this thing in preparation for this video. I think I have like a Hatchling. I think I am using some sort of Hatchling Tear setup, and it's fine. It's fine. The perk selection here kind of reads as like, ooh, it's like, okay, it's like kind of fine. But I've definitely heard some people out there being a little more enthused by it compared to my enthusiasm, which is a little bit low. I'll probably keep something from this thing, but probably not going to be a hand cannon that I will be using a ton. Next up, we have Unworthy 260 RPM rapid fire frame scout. Basically the only kind of scout rifle that I actually like. It is arc. It's the first rapid fire arc scout rifle since Contingency Plan, which came out like a million years ago. We have had a couple of arc scout rifles come out since something like Tarnished Metal, Adverse Possession, didn't have Volt Shot. Long Arm from Spire of the Watcher, didn't have Volt Shot. This thing is got Volt Shot. It's got the new perk, Rolling Storm. And then it's also just got some damage perks in between. First column's got Firefly. I can see a lot of people being very interested in Firefly, especially because like you might be able to maybe do some sort of something with elemental honing, right? You get Firefly, you're doing some solar damage, you're doing arc damage with the scout rifle. That's a 2-for-1 right there. But like otherwise, again, it's like a work with the gifts that the game is giving you, right? You really want to go rapid hit frenzy. I mean, sure, you could. Maybe you're just really into that. You want to do like a rapid hit Paracausal Affinity. You want to do a keep away friend, whatever. Fine. I'm not going to stop you, but again, let's work with the gifts that the game is giving. Well, let's work with the Rolling Storm. I believe this is the only primary weapon that can even get Rolling Storm right now until they start rolling this perk out to other things. And Firefly, not often a perk in this particular column, right? It's usually a second major perk column type of perk, right? So I imagine a lot of people are going to be going Firefly Rolling Storm. You're going to be going Firefly Volt Shot, and just playing with the gifts that the game is giving you, right? Just lean into that. Finally, we have Unvoiced, a Void Slug Frame Shotgun. The last one of these we got was Ness's Oblation from Root of Nightmares. That is correct. What were people mainly using on that thing? They were mainly using it as a boss damage tool in the form of Reconstruction and Vorpal Weapon. Remember, Vorpal is 15% on special weapons. It is not 10% like you might think because of the nerf that happened a while ago. What can we get on this thing? If you want to go a little more traditional, you got 4 times the charm Vorpal Weapon. You could totally do that. If you want Envious Arsenal Bait and Switch, a little bit of a bigger benefit, you could totally do that. Redirection is a perk that we are going to actually talk about in a future video. This thing got a actually pretty substantial buff to the point where it wouldn't surprise me if people wanted to try it out on this thing. I think of it more as like a primary weapon type perk as opposed to a special weapon type perk, but it is here if you wanted to mess around with it. Of course, we have destabilizing rounds, no repulsor brace, but we have demoralize instead, which is kind of like that new void perk that's coming in. We've been seeing this kind of combo very, very frequently with this episode, as opposed to like repulsor brace, demoralize, right? It's mainly been destabilizing, demoralize. So I think there's probably some people that are going to mess around with the double Ds, right? But if you want to go a little more traditional, it's there as well. You also got some PvP lone wolf closing time kind of a situation, right? If you really wanted to go that way. Elemental honing, I'm maybe again, just kind of depends on the build you're going for. But I think most people are going to try and mess around with this setup right here. And then maybe also just have like some combination of these 4 perks here in the middle. 4th times, bait and switch, envious arsenal, vorpal weapon, as some sort of like a backup DPS special weapon for when you run out of ammo on your probably exotic on some kind of a boss that happens to be in shotgun range, right? So yeah, I don't know if these are necessarily as heavy hitters as Vesper, right? Like when we saw Vesper and we saw Chill Inhibitor be able to get Envious Arsenal bait and switch with grenade launchers being as good as they were, it was like, yeah, guaranteed hit. And then as soon as people saw how good attrition orbs was on the velocity baton, it was like, oh my god, this is an orb printer. And then even the auto rifle can get like some pretty decent stuff with I think it has jolting feedback, right? The fusion rifle I don't think has gotten that much attention, but like 3 out of 4 for that place is pretty good. This, I think it's like a remains to be seen situation. Like maybe some stuff pops off here, but like if nothing did, I'd be like, yeah, I kind of saw that coming. So I was just talking with my friends and they were like, why don't you just include the Vesper weapons in the video? And I was like, okay, I mean, I guess I could, I'll make it quick though. Like we'll just talk about like the really good stuff, because it's pretty clear cut like what you're going to want to be chasing on these 4 weapons. So we're going to start with the Arc Auto Rifle, 600 RPM, Pyroelectric Propellant. What are we taking on this thing? In the second major column, I mean, I think it's a very easy call to take jolting feedback. Everything else here is just kind of, it's whatever. I mean, like Onslaught's kind of cool. Don't get me wrong. I like Onslaught, but I think jolting feedback is just a really nice perk to have. And then the top contenders otherwise are, you're looking at attrition orbs, you're looking at eddy current, you're also looking at strategist. Now, I think hunters were mainly using like a strategist jolting feedback setup in episode 2, but I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a class out there that just got a really cool aspect that has to do with their class ability, Titans. I'm looking at you. You know what strategist does? Okay. We're dropping lots of barricades to get more bolt charge, and you're just bolt charging everything to death. So this is one of the most popular combos on here. Eddy current's also up there, and attrition orb is also up there. But Titans, I mean, come on. Next, we had Gravitic Arrest, which is a void adaptive frame fusion. Honestly, the best role on here is probably a PvP related thing in under pressure closing time. You're not ever really going to have that much ammo in your special weapon, and both of these perks are at their strongest when you have 1 shot left in the magazine. Kind of makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, for a PvE thing, chain reaction's really like the main thing that I'm looking for. Maybe there's some sort of a utility play with Withering Gaze, but otherwise I think I'm just going chain reaction and maybe like a demolitionist or something. I could see maybe a repulsor brace coming in. But yeah, demo chain reaction is probably what I'd be hunting down for PvE. And even then, like this, I'm not in like a super big hurry to like make this happen, right? Next, we got the Velocity Baton. Everyone's been going crazy about attrition orbs. This makes so many orbs of power. It makes literally so many. If you are going with attrition orbs, I think you have 2 options in either Demolitionist or Repulsor Brace. I think both are okay. I think you probably lean a little more towards Demo for that free reload if you really want it. You do have repulsor destabilizing, which is maybe a bit more of a tantalizing option now that destabilizing rounds has gotten a more significant buff, but I do think a lot of people might be running this combo on more of like a primary weapon as opposed to a special weapon, and using this as a way to generate tons and tons and tons of orbs of power. Finally, we got the chill inhibitor, and I mean, you know the role. I mean, the gunsmith is currently giving it out right now. As long as you have beaten the dungeon, I assume so. This is the role to get. Envious Arsenal bait and switch. I mean, there's nothing else. Anything else that you would possibly want on this thing is just for your own fun or enjoyment of like a thing that you wanted to do. I could maybe see some sort of a Cascade Point thing. Cascade Point bait and switch is actually a more popular role than Envious Arsenal bait and switch, but I'm guessing that's because people were finding Cascade Point bait and switch way more often than Envious bait and switch, and just as a result there are just more of these still dormant in people's vaults. But yeah, Envious Arsenal bait and switch. Everything else is like, what are we even talking about here? You know, there's good stuff here. I don't want like nothing. None of this is like bad, right? Like there's plenty of good stuff here. I wouldn't besmirch you. You know, if I saw you using an unworthy, well, I mean, I'd probably besmirch the fact that you're using a scout rifle, but at least this is a good one, right? So those are your weapons for Sundered Doctrine. Good, but maybe not like that, like super upper tier. That's my hunch right now. Maybe I'm wrong in the future, and people find out some super cracked stuff with this stuff. But for now, I'm tepid. I'm tepid. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.